On August 2, 2025, the U.S. Supreme Court delivered a seismic ruling, striking down the broad tariffs imposed under the Trump administration. The 6-3 decision redefined presidential authority to impose tariffs for national security, sending shockwaves through global markets. Stock markets plunged worldwide, and the U.S. dollar swung wildly. The heart of the case was Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, which let presidents impose tariffs on goods deemed security threats. The Trump administration used this to levy steep tariffs on steel, aluminum, and more, sparking global retaliation and supply chain chaos. Today, the court ruled the executive's interpretation of national security had become too broad, encroaching on Congress's constitutional role. The decision is a major check on presidential power, reasserting Congress as the primary arbiter of trade. The justices warned that letting presidents define national security too broadly would gut Congress's power over commerce. Foreign leaders cautiously welcomed the ruling, while U.S. business reactions were mixed. Manufacturers and farmers hurt by retaliation celebrated. Industries protected by tariffs worried about new competition. The debate over trade isn't over. It's just moved from the White House back to Congress. The world is watching as the U.S. redefines its approach to global commerce. The consequences of this decision will unfold for years to come. Section 232 of the 1962 Trade Expansion Act was created to protect industries vital to national defense. For decades, it was rarely used, reserved for true emergencies. That changed in 2018, when President Trump invoked it to impose sweeping tariffs on steel and aluminum, even targeting close allies. The stated reason: a strong metals industry was essential for defense. Critics called it economic protectionism, not real security. U.S. steel and aluminum producers thrived, but automakers and manufacturers faced soaring costs, fueling inflation. The tariffs created winners and losers at home and sparked a global trade war. Allies and rivals alike hit back with retaliatory tariffs on American goods: Harley-Davidson motorcycles, bourbon, soybeans, and more. The result disrupted supply chains, hurt farmers, and years of economic instability. The world saw the tariffs as a violation of trade rules and a hostile act. Section 232, once a rarely used tool, became a flashpoint for global economic conflict. The fallout set the stage for today's historic Supreme Court decision. The legacy of Section 232 is a cautionary tale about the risks of unchecked executive power in trade. Legal challenges to the tariffs began almost immediately in 2018. Steel importers argued the tariffs weren't about security, but protectionism, and that the president had overstepped his authority. The core issue: could Congress delegate its power to regulate commerce so broadly? The Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to tax and regulate foreign trade. Plaintiffs claimed national security was so vague it gave the president a blank check. Lower courts sided with the government, deferring to executive authority on security. But as the economic fallout grew, pressure mounted for the Supreme Court to act. By 2024, the case reached the High Court, with years of data showing the tariffs' disruptive impact. Legal scholars and lawmakers warned of eroding legislative power. The stage was set for a landmark decision on the separation of powers. In the Supreme Court, the government argued the president needed broad authority to act swiftly on national security. They insisted Congress intended national security to be flexible, covering economic threats. The Solicitor General warned that limiting this power would weaken the presidency and America's global standing. The business coalition countered, this wasn't about policy wisdom, but constitutional authority. They argued Congress alone should set trade policy, and that vague security claims let presidents bypass the law. Plaintiffs warned unchecked executive power could let any president impose tariffs at will. They urged the court to set clear limits on presidential authority under Section 232. The justices faced a stark choice: preserve executive flexibility or restore congressional control over trade. The Supreme Court's majority opinion was a strong defense of the separation of powers. The court didn't strike down Section 232, but sharply limited its use. National security could no longer mean general economic competition. The president must now show a direct link between specific imports and a real threat to defense. The ruling restored Congress's role in setting trade policy. Dissenting justices warned the new test would paralyze the executive and invite endless lawsuits, but the majority insisted future tariffs need clear congressional authorization. The era of unilateral trade wars by executive order is over, for now. The decision resets the constitutional balance on American trade. The market's response was immediate and dramatic. The Dow plunged over 800 points as investors scrambled to assess the fallout. Steel and aluminum stocks tanked, fearing a flood of cheaper imports. Automakers and manufacturers rallied, anticipating lower costs. Agricultural commodities like soybeans surged as hopes rose for the end of retaliatory tariffs. The US dollar wobbled, reflecting uncertainty about trade and the economy. Some analysts predicted a stronger dollar in the long run, thanks to a more stable trade environment. For consumers, the ruling promised relief from higher prices caused by tariffs. Economists estimated the tariffs cost households hundreds per year. With tariffs struck down, prices for many goods are expected to fall, but not overnight. Supply chains will need time to adjust. The economic aftershocks will ripple for months. The ruling marks a turning point for American businesses and consumers alike. Experts across industries weighed in on the Supreme Court's decision. Business leaders in agriculture and manufacturing welcomed the end of retaliatory tariffs and the chance to rebuild global relationships. Economists largely praised the ruling, calling tariffs a drag on growth and a tax on consumers. Dr. Emily Vance of the Peterson Institute said, "The data is clear. Tariffs hurt more than they help. This is a return to rational policy." Political analysts saw the decision as a rejection of economic nationalism and a reaffirmation of global cooperation. Legal scholars called it a landmark for the separation of powers. Professor David Chen noted, "The court is drawing a new line on how much power Congress can delegate." The ruling will force Congress to be more specific when granting authority to the president, not just on trade, but across government. The decision signals a new era of legislative responsibility. The world is watching how the U.S. will wield its restored trade powers. The debate over America's economic future is just beginning. The Supreme Court's decision shifts trade power back to Congress after decades of executive dominance. Presidents can no longer impose sweeping tariffs by citing vague security threats. They must now seek explicit approval from lawmakers. This change means more public debate, coalition building, and accountability in trade policy. Congress will have to take clear positions and face voters on trade issues. The ruling could spark broader challenges to executive power in other areas, from environmental rules to financial oversight. American governance is entering a new era of legislative activism and constitutional scrutiny. The Supreme Court's decision closes one chapter of U.S. trade policy and opens another filled with uncertainty. Allies welcomed the move, hoping for a return to stable, rules-based trade. At home, the ruling deepened political divides. Free traders cheered. Economic nationalists condemned it. Businesses must now adapt to a new landscape, lobbying Congress for support or protection. The fundamental debate, protectionism versus free trade, is more urgent than ever. Congress, now firmly in control, faces tough choices about America's economic future. The world is watching. Will the U.S. champion open markets or turn inward? The answer will shape global commerce for years to come.